Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Oh, forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. 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 Hello, I'm Willie from the Ozarks. Thank you for joining me in studying A Course in Miracles workbook for students. We're ready for lesson 333 in A Course in the workbook for students. We're reading from the original edition here on November the 29th of 2022. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Conflict must be resolved. It cannot be evaded, set aside, denied, disguised, seen somewhere else, called by another name, nor hidden by deceit of any kind, if it would be escaped. It must be seen exactly as it is, where it is thought to be, in the reality which has been given it, with the purpose that the mind accorded it. For only then are its defenses lifted, and the truth can shine upon it as it disappears. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Father, forgiveness is the light you chose to shine away all conflict and all doubt, and light the way for our return to you. Let's read that sentence again in the prayer. Father, forgiveness is the light you chose to shine away all conflict and all doubt, and light the way for our return to you. Forgiveness is the light. No light but this can end our evil dream. No light but this can save the world. For this alone will never fail in anything, being your gift to your beloved Son. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Okay, let's go take a look in our Manual for Teachers reading. We're ready for 16, kind of a long one, so we won't do a lot of talking, but let's read through it. How should the teacher of God spend his day? We're going to learn about magic thoughts. We're going to learn about, well, let's just read about it. We'll talk more about it a little bit as we go. To the advanced teacher of God, this question is meaningless of how should the teacher of God spend his day. To the advanced teacher of God, this question is meaningless. There is no program, for the lessons in the curriculum change each day. Yet he is sure of but one thing: they do not change at random. Seeing this and understanding it is true, he rests content. He will be told all that his role should be this day and every day, and those who share that role with him will find him, so they can learn the lessons for the day together. Not one is absent whom he needs, not one is sent without a learning goal already set, and one which can be met that very day. For the advanced teacher of God, then, this question is superfluous. It has been asked and answered, and he keeps in constant contact with the answer with a capital A. He keeps in constant contact with the answer. He is set and sees the road on which he walks stretched surely and smoothly before him. Isn't that nice? Paragraph 2. But what about those who have not reached his certainty? Well, they're still teachers of God too, because they've heard the call and answered it, to see your interests as not apart from someone else's. But what about those who've not reached his certainty, as the advanced teachers of God have? They are not yet ready for such lack of structuring on their own part. What must they do to learn to give the day to God? There are some general rules which do apply, although each one must use them as best he can in his own way. Routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. Routines. You get into a routine of meditating at a certain time, certain day, and then something comes up and you can't do it. And what do? You get upset and say, hey, turn that TV off. I wanted to meditate. And all of a sudden you realize you're doing the very thing that's contrary to the reason you're wanting to meditate, to be peaceful. So don't get too caught up in your routines. Be flexible. Let the Holy Spirit teach you every moment of the day. There are some general rules which do apply, although each one must use them as best he can in his own way. Routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. Broadly speaking, then, it can be said that it is well to start the day aright. It's well to start the day right, okay? Get the day started right. Wake up peacefully, stay peacefully. Stay peaceful. It is always possible to begin again should the day begin with error, yet there are obvious advantages in terms of saving time if the need for this can be avoided. If you can keep yourself from falling into ego traps from the beginning, he says there's obvious advantages in terms of saving time if the need for starting again can be avoided. So start the day right. Paragraph 3, at the beginning it is wise to think in terms of time. This is by no means the ultimate criterion, but at the outset it is probably the simplest to observe. The saving of time is an essential early emphasis, which, although it remains important throughout the learning process, becomes less and less emphasized. At the outset, we can safely say that time devoted to starting the day right does indeed save time. Take time for your meditation of a morning. How much time should be so spent? Well, this must depend on the teacher of God himself. He cannot claim that title until he has gone through the workbook, since we are learning within the framework of our course. After completion of the workbook, after completion of the more structured practice periods which the workbook contains, individual need becomes the chief consideration. Paragraph 4. This course is always practical. It may be that the teacher of God is not in a situation which fosters quiet thoughts as he awakes. If this is so, let him but remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. Duration is not the major concern. One can easily sit still an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. One can easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join with him completely. Perhaps the one generalization that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time. Continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. You may find the difficulty will diminish and drop away. If not, this is the time to stop. Well, now he's given us a nice way to tell how long to meditate for the ones that have completed the course, and we're now on just meditating as long as need requires, or that we feel led to internally. No time requirements now. He says, well, if you feel like quitting, well, take a minute or two longer and see if the need to quit abates, and if it does, continue going. If not, that's the time to stop. That's a nice practical rule. One of the things I wanted to say that I forgot in the beginning is that he's going to teach us another little way of knowing how long to meditate. Well, there it is. The same procedure should be followed at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening if it is not feasible for you to take it just before going to sleep. It is not wise to lie down for it. It is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer, whether it's in a cross-legged yoga position, or if it's in a sitting on the floor, or sitting on a chair with your feet on the floor, or even with your feet up in a recliner. But at any rate, he says it's best to be sitting up in whatever position. The ones of us that have been doing this a while realize when we lay down to meditate, we usually don't remember anything. We kind of go to sleep, don't we? It is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer. Having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this respect. If possible, however, just before going to sleep is a desirable time to devote to God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. If it is expedient to spend this time earlier, at least be sure you do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. As you're going to sleep, or right before you go to sleep, give that last moment of just a thought of God. How does he say it? If it is expedient to spend the time earlier, at least be sure that you do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. 6. There is one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. It is a thought of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. And even though he said there's three things there, that's one thought. A thought of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. You think you made a place of safety for yourself. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. It is not so. Your safety lies not there. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. And it is this you fear, and only this. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing, nothing at all. Your defenses will not work, but you are not in danger. You have no need of your defenses. You have no need of them. Recognize this, and they will disappear. And only then will you accept your real protection. In my defenselessness, my safety lies was one of our lessons he talked about. Number 7, how simply, how easily does the day slip by for the teacher of God who has accepted his protection. All that he did before in the name of safety no longer interests him, for he is safe and knows it to be so. He has a guide who will not fail. That guide is capitalized. God's your guide through the Holy Spirit, the voice for God. The teacher of God has a guide who will not fail. He need make no distinctions among the problems he perceives, for he to whom he turns with all of them recognizes no order of difficulty in resolving them. He is as safe in the present as he was before illusions were accepted into his mind, and as he will be when he has let them go. There is no difference in his state at different times and different places, because they are all one to God. This is his safety, that he's with God, and he has no need for more than this. He knows that he's always with God, no matter what his place and time might be, and what are the circumstances occurring. 8. Yet there will be temptations along the way the teacher of God has yet to travel, and he has need of reminding himself throughout the day of his protection. Oh yeah, I'm safe. I am as God created me. God's right here guiding me and leading me. How can he do this? Particularly during the time when his mind is occupied with external things. He can but try, and his success depends on his conviction that he will succeed. He must be sure success is not of him, but will be given him at any time, in any place and circumstance he calls for it. There are times his certainty will waver, And the instant this occurs, he will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. Forget not this is magic, and that magic is a sorry substitute for true assistance. So what is magic? It's, let's read that sentence before. There are times his certainty will waver, and the instant this occurs, he will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone instead of on the voice for God, on God's guidance, the unseen hand. So if you place reliance on yourself alone, forget not this is magic, and that magic is a sorry substitute for true assistance. It is not good enough for God's teacher, because it is not good enough for God's Son. 9. The avoidance of magic is the avoidance of temptation. For all temptation is nothing more than the attempt to substitute another will for God's. These attempts may indeed seem frightening, yet they are merely pathetic. They might seem frightening, but they're merely pathetic. They can have no effects, neither good nor bad, neither rewarding nor demanding sacrifice, healing nor destructive, quieting nor fearful. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. Wow. So listen to that again. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing, and he uses forgiveness to let it go because he realizes it was nothing. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. All intermediate lessons will but lead to this and bring this goal nearer to recognition. For magic of any kind in all its forms simply does nothing. Its powerlessness is the reason it can be so easily escaped. What has no effects can hardly terrify. 10. There is no substitute for the will of God. In simple statement, it is to this fact that the teacher of God devotes his day. Each substitute he may accept as real can but deceive him, but he is safe from all deception if he so decides. Perhaps he needs to remember, God is with me. I cannot be deceived. There's something you can say to yourself throughout the day when you're busy doing other external things. You can at least say, God is with me. I cannot be deceived. Perhaps he prefers other words, or only one word, or none at all. Yet each temptation to accept magic as true must be abandoned through his recognition, not that it is fearful, not that it is sinful, not that it is dangerous, but merely that it is meaningless, rooted in sacrifice and separation, two aspects of one error and no more, rooted in sacrifice and separation, two aspects of one error and no more. He merely chooses to give up all that he never had. And for this, in quotes, sacrifice, is heaven restored to his awareness. And the last paragraph, 11. Is not this an exchange that you would want? The world would gladly make it if it knew it could be made. It is God's teachers who must teach it that it can. And so it is their function to make sure that they have learned it. No risk is possible throughout the day except to put your trust in magic, for it is only this that leads to pain. There is no will but God's. His teachers know that this is so and have learned that everything but this is magic. There is no will but God's. All belief in magic is maintained by just one simple-minded illusion, that it works. All through his training, every day and hour and every minute and second, must God's teachers learn to recognize the forms of magic and perceive their meaninglessness. Fear is withdrawn from them, and so they go. And thus the gate of heaven is reopened, and its light can shine again on an untroubled mind. Wow, isn't that a beautiful reading? There was a lot there. We encourage you to go back and read it again if you so choose. There's a lot there. Anyway, let's go take a look at our associated reading with today's lesson. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. What is the ego? But before we read it, let me tell you about another blueberry from ediblelandscaping.com, the Bluebelle Blueberry. A Vaccinium ashei is a southern rabbiteye, adaptable and vigorous type blueberry. Ripens early for its species with large light blue fruit. If you can wait after it turns blue, it increases in sweetness. Grows very good at the nursery in old wood chips, applied annually. Plant in rows 5 to 6 feet apart in zone 7 or 6-foot circles if planted alone. Zone 6 through 9 is where it does well in. All right. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. What is the ego? The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, born in a body doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. It is the will that sees the will of God as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful, life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. The ego is insane. In fear it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, in separation from the infinite. In its insanity it thinks it has become a victor over God himself. And in its terrible autonomy it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. The Son of God is egoless. What can he know of madness and the death of God when he abides in him? What can he know of sorrow and of suffering when he lives in eternal joy? What can he know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, of hatred and attack, when all there is surrounding him is everlasting peace, forever conflict-free and undisturbed, in deepest silence and tranquility? To know reality, and reality's with a capital R there, to know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, all those magic thoughts. To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. In suffering, the price for faith in it is so immense that crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar to illusions, to the shrine of life itself, and peace will be restored forever to the holy minds which God created as his Son, his dwelling place, his joy, his love, completely his, completely one with him. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Lesson 333, let's read it again. Conflict must be resolved. It cannot be evaded, set aside, denied, disguised, seen somewhere else, called by another name, nor hidden by deceit of any kind if it would be escaped. It must be seen exactly as it is, where it is thought to be, in the reality which has been given it, and with the purpose that the mind accorded it. For only then are its defenses lifted, and the truth can shine upon it as it disappears. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Father, forgiveness is the light you chose to shine away all conflict and all the doubt, and light the way for our return to you. No light but this can end our evil dreams. No light but this can save the world. For this alone will never fail in anything, being being your gift to your beloved Son. Forgiveness. The ability to forgive is God's gift to us. Well, let's sing this as we close today, and thank you so much for joining me in studying about not making decisions on our own, trusting God in all things, letting forgiveness lead the way. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. Oh, forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. 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 Forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here.